hello, you two. I'm so glad to see you here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Penny Mabie.
Hi, I'm Michelle Swope.
Hello, all. Justin Bubenik.
We're doing this because it's Pride Month in June. But when Pride Month is done, what do we hope from our communities that they carry from Pride, that they carry from this panel? What would we like to see year-round instead of just focusing on during Pride to help us be more accepted, more welcome, feel more safe in the community as we go about our fly fishing, our conservation learning journey, and being out there with folks?
Months of celebration exist to accentuate, not to just be like the 1 month you celebrate and then it goes away. That's how I view any of these months or days that we emphasize something.
I think representation is just so important in the space that we find a way to properly represent the queer community in the fly fishing industry.
What I expect when June is done is what I expect every day of my life, and that is to have more interactions with more people who care, want the world to be better, and want to have a supportive community regardless of where they're coming from or how they identify. And I want to encourage more conversation.
My wish is for it to become the norm, as you said, Justin, that yes, I'm representing, but that it doesn't raise eyebrows, that it doesn't, people don't go like, oh, now what do I say? Now what do I do? Now what? Oh, why did she say that? What? Now what? Why didn't she just keep that to herself? I'm just going to keep making it uncomfortable, because it is only through exposure that people learn, right? And so that's what I'm taking away from this, and that's what I'm hoping, and that, yes, June accentuates the fact that we deserve to be celebrated, and we deserve to celebrate ourselves, and around the rest of the year, we also deserve to be recognized and acknowledged and valued and not othered, and also not thought of as, it doesn't matter, it's none of my business, because it is. Because as soon as you say you're none of my business, you've just diminished me. And I will not be diminished anymore.
We deserve validation. We all deserve validation.
We all do. And so, allies, if you're listening, that's what we need. That's what we want.
Right on.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Penny Mabie. Who am I? I'm an ardent fly angler. I'm a conservationist. I am the chair of the State Council of Trout Unlimited for Washington State, and I'm in the Three Rivers chapter of Trout Unlimited, and I'm also in Puget Sound Women on the Fly. So I'm totally all in on TU and conservation and fly fishing. And I'm a lesbian, just to add that in there. So let's have our panelists introduce themselves. Let's go to J. Michelle first.
Oh, hi, I'm J. Michelle Swope. I am on the board of iFishiBelong, also a founding member of United Women on the Fly. I am a queer fly shop owner and guide service. I herald from now Roslyn, Washington. I'm stoked to talk today.
Hello, all. Justin Bubenik, he, him, here in Bend, Oregon, born and raised outside of Portland, Oregon. I've kind of been all over since then. By day, I'm a lawyer, but I also run a nonprofit called Fly Curious that's focused on getting queer folks into fly fishing, as well as offering consultancy services for different industry folks in order to get better representation and to make sure that they're creating welcoming spaces for queer and othered anglers as well, along with trying to create a good space for conservation, creating more conservation-minded anglers as well while we're out there. I'm also on the board for FFI, for Fly Fishers International, as well as serving on the board of our local chapter as well. I'm also a prior volunteer for Mayfly Project and a few other local fly fishing organizations as well.
Justin, how do you have time to do anything else? You're a super volunteer.
It is my spare time. It's my spare time. That's what I do for fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks both of you for being on this panel. As you can tell from our introductions, we're all queer. We're here to talk about how are we, both at iFishiBelong and in the broader fishing industry, how are we centering LGBTQ plus folks, and how are we welcoming everyone into the sport that we love and the practice of conservation that we really adhere to. I will be moderating and I have some questions for the two of you, not to put you on the hot seat or anything, but I just want to give you a chance to sort of talk about your role and how you are centering queer people in the work that you do, in the volunteering that you do, and the organizations that you are with. I think further along in this little panel, I think Jay Michelle is going to turn right around and put me on the hot seat as well. I'll start with you, Justin, and ask you to share a little bit more about your organization and the community that it serves.
Sure. So yeah, we focus on serving queer folks, specifically those looking to get into fly fishing, and then those that are already angling as well to find community and to improve their skills. We also are a guide service as well. So we look to guide those folks just looking to get into it for the first time and looking for a low cost way to get into it in the state of Oregon, since we are a nonprofit as well. All of our nonprofit mission and main service and programs are all centered on getting more queer folks out into the outdoors, angling in the water, and into the industry. But with that, we still heavily rely on allies and on other folks that frequently are underrepresented in the community as well. And we do like to uplift them, and we always offer our programs to them as well. But again, if we're looking at from the strictly financial side and where our financial programs and our income is going, it is to those queer anglers and making it really be financially affordable and financially approachable to bring down that barrier for queer anglers, since that is just another one that everybody has to face, but it's one that hopefully we can help queer anglers face a bit easier also.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks so much. So inspiring. Jay Michelle, what are some of the impactful ways that your business is supporting queer individuals?
So I bought this business a little while ago, and I'm now fully in charge of the business. I'm a full owner now. So I'm able to start working on using more inclusive language in like the website and the advertising that I do. But more than that, quite honestly, this gives me a little bit more of a platform to talk to and talk about folks that maybe want to come into the world of fly fishing, but there are some barriers to it. So it's very similar to the way that I work. I'm a volunteer for Trout Unlimited and a paid staff person as well, contractor. But in all the ways that I work to remove the barriers to volunteering and getting folks that look different than typical volunteers to come and volunteer, I do that as well for the sport of fly fishing. And I'm using the Crow Creek Fly Shop and Guide Service as yet another platform to be able to try and remove barriers to invite more folks into our world of fly fishing and also just the world of conservation, because they, for me, are hand in hand. I mean, some of the ways is like the obvious that you would think of, like what you put on your website, the words you use, the verbiage you don't use, things like that. You know, words are so important, but also just trying to build a community within the guides that I use to help them be more welcoming and aware of what being welcoming truly is. And instead of just having a sign or a flag or a sticker on the door, having that actually be true when people come through the door. So being welcoming to all folk, regardless of they look like someone who comes in a fly shop or not, just practicing those skills. And I get to train and work with my folks to do that. And they do a great job. It makes me really proud. It isn't very hard, but it is a mindset, I think, that we as an industry need to think on more and be more conscious of using when we're advertising and talking and asking people to come and enjoy our sport and spend their money.
Right.
And I'll add to that, I think that we all downplay it to some degree, and it's hard to say about yourself ever, but it's easier for folks to say about others. But I think that we downplay the importance of just being there and being who you are. And again, that is something that you are doing, like just being who you are and being a shop owner, and that importance there, I think it takes effort. It does. Like it takes energy, It takes emotional energy to hold space for yourself and to hold that space as a queer person in the industry that is so rooted again in not necessarily anti-queer, but definitely not being necessarily queer friendly or representative in any way or form, where we do kind of hold on to that aristocracy, English aristocracy, old gentleman kind of look. So,
yeah.
Thanks for saying that, Justin. I forget that part, but representation is super key as well, right? Just from, first of all, being a woman presenting, right? And then also being a queer woman. So, yeah. Penny, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like what your experiences have been there?
Yeah. I mean, so it's really interesting because in my business, I have over the years had to really think about, because I'm a facilitator, I'm a third party facilitator. So I'm supposed to be neutral and kind of, in a way, invisible in terms of I don't have any opinions, I don't have any ideas or thoughts. What I am is I'm a process person helping others have really good conversations. So it's been really hard for me to really be thoughtful about, okay, how do I center LGBTQ plus folks in that kind of space when I need to be careful that I'm not pushing anything, any kind of position or premise or anything into a space that is about others, that I'm just neutrally facilitating. So the way that I've worked around that is I'm very open about who I am. It took me a long time because I worked with rural clients for, decades, and it took a long time before I could get to that place. When I struck out on my own about 5 or 6 years ago, I joined the Greater Seattle Business Association, and then I got national certification as a queer-owned business, and did all that, not because I was trying to grow my business or take advantage of some programs or anything like that, but because I wanted to represent. I wanted to say, I'm here, I'm queer, you're doing business with me, have fun doing business with me. I'm not any different than anybody else who do business with me, except I'm better. So that's on the business side of things. It's a really interesting question, Jay Michelle, when you asked me that about being chair of the Washington State Council of Trout Unlimited. Mm-hmm. Trout Unlimited is, I hope most people know, is a national nonprofit for conservation of cold water habitats and cold water fish, the fish that we love to fly fish for. It is divided into states. There's a grassroots side. That's the side that I'm on. That's the side Jay Michelle is on. It's all volunteer driven. It is not a fly fishing group. It is a conservation group, but it was started by fly anglers, and it hosts many, many, many fly anglers. So as you said, Jay Michelle, they're connected. It's impossible to separate them. And quite frankly, I think most fly anglers, when they learn to love fly angling, they also learn to love where they're fly angling, because it's true what they say, trout don't live in ugly places. And so you want to preserve that. You want to care for that. Having said that, as someone who is chairing the state council, which is kind of the manager for the different chapters around the state, and putting together, state meetings and bringing people together and looking at our missions and wondering how are we doing and encouraging our chapters to serve more people, it's an interesting conundrum. It's because there's a lot of, in the sport of fly fishing, as you so kindly said, Justin, and I love the term, but now I can't remember it. It was about the English gentleman, or the aristocracy of fly fishing, right? Well, there's an aristocracy, and then there's the good old boy as well. I mean, there's both of those wrapped up in the old hierarchical traditional fly angler, right? And that picture is changing. But it's not obvious to people that it's changing. And so that's, again, where I can, just by being a queer chair, I'm representing, right? I'm out there, I'm open, I talk about my partner, I don't hesitate, I make everything sound as regular and normal as I possibly can. And when I have the opportunity to talk about inclusivity and things like that, I take that opportunity with all of the chapters. So it's really important to me. And it is a hill to climb in some areas and some places, and with some generational folks.
With almost all, I'd say, like folks over a certain age. And I'd say it's not because they even intend to be at all. Right. And it's like, I hate to be generationally, again, biased in any way or form, because I think that so much is just, again, we inherit what we inherit, and we inherit what we inherit from society as well. It's like I see it in my father, I see it in everybody, but they don't mean it poorly, but they say they don't care that we're queer. They don't care. They don't mean it in a mean way, but it's easy to take it that way. And in some ways it is negative, because that thing, it is truly a part of who we are. So you should care that we're queer. Yes, exactly. You should care about that. And that should matter to you, because again, it matters to us. And again, I just constantly hear that in the back of my head. And that's why I think that I diminish it in myself, and I think that other folks diminish it as well, and people that aren't queer diminish it in queer folks, when they don't see the internal energy it takes to be out and to actually make that statement, I'm gay, and know that there's always going to be that thought in the back of your head about who you're saying that to, and whether they're either going to hate you for it instantly and no longer care about what you say after that point, or again, just think, why the heck are you telling me this? Like,
Right.
I don't care. I don't need
None
to
of
know
my
this.
business.
Keep it to yourself. Like, this is none of my business, like, kind of thing. Which, again, to some degree, I respected for so long. But now I'm just like, I'm making it your business because you probably said something that was offensive, or I'm in a space where I think I need to say this because I think you're going to say something offensive to somebody I care about more than myself. Because I won't say it to defend myself, and I won't say it outright to protect my own feelings, but to protect my group and the people I'm there with. I will absolutely state it. I will say I'm gay. I won't state it for anybody else, but I will let it be known so that they know what's coming out of their mouth and that they need to be careful. It's tough and it takes energy, but especially in a place like Trout Unlimited, and I'm saying it coming from FFI, where I'm the youngest board member on the national board, but also I'd say I don't think there are some people under 45. I think there's at least that, but again, like they're all over 55 and they're all white and they're mostly all men. There's a few older white women as well, but again, it's just like that generational divide where they just don't see it. They're like, oh no, we're accepting. Like, no, like why wouldn't people want to come and learn from us? And it's like, well, you don't look like them, for one. So it's like, and again, they see people that look like you. They've experienced people that look like you. And it's a 50-50 shot of whether they're going to be accepting or whether they're going to hate you for it. So I don't want to put myself in that risk. Why would I want to put myself and expose myself to that potential damage if I want to learn something that I'm only somewhat interested in the first place? It's like, if you got to break down that barrier too, where you got to show that representation. You got to show the people that they're there, that they're going to be welcoming. If they don't look like them, at least you're going to have to say it vocally. Like, so again, for me, I look like everybody else. I look like some fly bro that you see in the fly shop. So if I don't state it outright, sometimes I think people aren't going to necessarily know that it's a safe space and to be truly who you want to be around me.
And that's really an interesting point, and that is, how do we make it a safe space? What do you do, both of you, to make fly angling and conservation a safe space for our queer brethren, if you will?
There's a thing that came to my mind, Justin, when you were talking, and thank you for those words, about what I do now versus what I used to, how I act now, what I say, and to whom, and how often. I surprised myself when I started running the shop before I bought it. I became a lot more vocal in ways I didn't expect. Like, I surprised myself. But I realized, I'll give you an example. Someone came in and they were, for whatever reason, voicing their utter disdain about tribal treaty rights loudly in the shop. And I absolutely, without even a pause, shut them down and made it very clear that that language in my shop was never welcome. And I did it for two reasons. One, I believe that it should not ever be in here. Well, three reasons. Two, I didn't want that individual to ever come back here. But three, there were other people that maybe could hear. And whereas maybe in a earlier iteration of me, I would just be quiet or not say anything, became so much more important to me to really take a stance of inclusivity and not allowing racist speech, which is what that is. So it's just an example of, and as time goes by, I find myself being more vocal in my shop when things are being talked about that are headed in a direction that I know is going to be harmful to others, not necessarily me, because I'm the shop owner, and for whatever reason, they'll never do it to my face. Right? So, But I worry about what they're going to do and say to other people, even if it's not intentional. That whole thing of like, I'm colorblind, right? That's another thing. And then keep it to yourself. It doesn't matter to me. Well, it needs to matter to everyone, especially in a climate of such divisiveness, of such harm and hatred happening to pick a marginalized community. That is something that over time I've gotten bolder about speaking out. But that was just a thought I had. I just wanted to share. And I would love to hear from you two just over time. Like Penny and I are a little bit older than you, Justin. I wonder about that progression and for both of you, if you notice that you're more vocal now than you used to be, or how that has changed over time. How has it changed to advocate for others and or yourself over time while we're making places that we're in safer for everyone?
It's changed a lot for me. I mean, I'm old enough to have been through a lot of cultural change, and to the point where there was a time when I had rainbow stickers on my vehicles, and when I was heading to Idaho and Montana, I took them off before I went. So that was a safety thing. I wouldn't do that now. There was a time, golly gee, I mean, a million things come to mind, but there was a time when I never said, I mean, I wasn't in the closet, but I wasn't out of the closet either. I was just passive, right? Unless somebody asked me point blank, I never had anything to say about it. That has passed. I went on a cross-country trip and fished with guides all across the country in some of the remote parts of the country. And at the time, it was just after my wife had passed away. And so they would ask me what brought me on this trip and so forth. And I would never hesitate to say, my late wife and I had always wanted to do this trip. And I made sure to put that out there. I think, as you said, Justin, about safety, right? Put it out there early so that there wasn't any mistake. There wasn't any question about it. And the responses I got were, for the most part, either neutral or incredibly supportive. I mean, I had one guy who was just about coming out of his boat saying, if anybody ever gives you any trouble, you let me know. It was awesome. So yeah, it has changed dramatically. And I think because of that, Jay Michelle, I think I now have an obligation, because I've lived through the wars, because I've been there, I know what it feels like to feel unsafe. I have an obligation to make it as safe as it possibly can be for anybody in my presence or in any organizations that I'm a part of.
And that's where I feel like it's so tough now, because it's like, again, I don't know. I didn't come out until the age of the internet. So I look at it now and I think about my experiences in person with people. And for the most part, only having positive and or neutral in-person experiences. People not explicitly ever directing hate directly towards me in my face, knowing that I'm gay. But the internet and like social media and the proliferation of being able to hide behind this mask of the internet allows this hate to just expand and just grow and fester and everything. And everybody has a voice, which it sounds horrible for me to say out loud, but it sucks sometimes that everybody has a voice. There are people that should not have a voice at all, and that we should be able to discredit, and we should be able to see their face and their disgusting face and the words that are coming out of their mouth to associate with it, so we can discredit them and anything they say in the future as well. I just think that it's such a cowardly way for people to be able to hide their hate, and I mean, to be able to show their hate, but they be able to actually hide any accountability and actually putting their face to it. And I think that it's a way for young folks to feel really, really scared about what's out there, because they see that what people are willing to say on the internet, and they think that that's the reality of the world as well. And it is the reality of the world. That's where people live a lot of times, is on the internet, and they don't get out as much. And again, especially during COVID and things like that. So kids growing up with COVID, where all they lived on was the internet, and they saw that visceral hate. And sure, there's plenty of love out there. And again, plenty of comments are filled with love as well. But it's like we have a tendency to hyperfixate. All it takes is one horrible person in that sea of love to completely ruin and make a place unsafe. So it's like, it's so hard we go back to talking about making things safe and making a safe space. And it is just so difficult unless we can guarantee exclusivity and we can guarantee vetting. And we just have such a small space where it's like, again, if we're at a campground where it's open to the public, I can't guarantee safety. Somebody could walk through there that has some hate and they can choose to display it like in a public space. So again, unless we're on private property and with only people that we know, it's just it's a reality that we constantly live with. And I had a deep conversation with my dad this weekend, and I don't know how it never crossed his mind, or if it never crossed his mind, or if he was just trying to hide it, or if like folks that aren't queer don't think about this at all. But the fact that I don't know if you all live with this or think about this, and if it's just me, but like not on a daily basis, but on a near daily basis, I think about that there are people out there that hate me and do want me dead for being gay. And that is a fact, an absolute fact. There are people out there, they are small and they are unimportant and there are few and far between, but it is a reality that we have to live with in our soul. And that is something that we have to face on a daily basis. And it is burdensome and it is a lot. And that my dad didn't seem to realize that or think about that, something that we live with as queer folks. And we have to carry that constant burden and that effort and everything like that when we're interacting with people. And again, So saying, going back to the safe space thing, trying to lessen that burden and lessen that fear for folks, but still always acknowledging that I can't eliminate it. Because I can't eliminate it in myself, so how could I do that for anybody else? I can only just try to limit it as much as possible and find those spaces where, again, it sucks, but right now it has to be exclusive and excluding some of those people that could pose risks.
So that brings me to an interesting question, and that is about affinity groups. Do we still need them? Do we still need to gather with right? Is that the way that we can feel safe? Do we still need pride celebrations? I mean, in many ways, we've come so far, right? We have gay marriage. We have, a lot of rights that we didn't have before. And so there are those who say, why do you need this anymore? Why are you, parading down a street saying, I'm here, I'm queer, take me or leave me? Why do you feel you need to do that?
I mean, it is. As long as there's one person out there that still feels the way those expressions that I just stated. Again, we need to be able to have a space where we can express that we aren't scared and or just try to mask our fear and be around people where we feel safe as much as possible. Because again, there are people that are going to feel that way. I mean, I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I'm a lawyer. It is a fact that there are countries where it is illegal. I worked in Jamaica where there are anti-buggery laws still in place. You cannot be gay there. It is just illegal.
Right.
And it still blows people's mind. They are not living in that reality. That reality does not exist to them. They are unwilling to accept that we live in a world where that is a reality, and it blows my mind sometimes. And sorry, as long as that is still the case, and again, I'm only talking about it because I know the insight now of my father that, again, as long as there's people like my dad who I love deeply and who I know loves me deeply and cares about me deeply, again, he doesn't hate at all, but we still need it. That's for sure. So
thank you so much for your words. It's so true. For a long time, interestingly, and it's never folks who, I'm going to use the queer community. It's rarely the queer community that says that out loud. But a lot of straight folk I know will be like, well, why do you need a parade? And why do you need to gather in an exclusive way? And I'm like, well, as a woman, first of all, I can tell you that the feeling of not being safe has been since I was born. Then we're going to layer on top of that being queer. And I can also tell you, because I was born in the mid 60s, right? So the 80s was really not a great decade for us, nor the 90s, queer folk. And as again, public discourse gets more and more fragmented, we need to design safer, and there's never going to be a safe, but a safer space for us. And we need to design ways in which we can commune together, because the fight is hard. Justin's been talking about different ways in which it's just exhausting, right? And that in and of itself is a reason for us to come together. There's a piece about community and celebrating our differences together that fosters community, that allows us to remember we're not alone, that gives us a break from the constant microaggressions that are just raining from every direction. I think that there's a measure of psychological safety that happens when we can gather together in a safer space, that I think that's really necessary for us to build resilience, because as queer folk today in the United States of America and other places, we need to be resilient. The well dries up around resilience. So how do we get resilient around the broader societal stressor kind of stuff? So gathering together is very, very important when we can and when it feels safe. The ways in which we gather, or the way that in which we talk about, advertise, and invite for gatherings is also incredibly important. Here's an example. We're holding a women in fly fishing event, women who identify as women, fly fishing event at the end of June for International Women in Fly Fishing Month, and then the day, which is the 27th. Our posters and our advertisings on social media and in person say, all genders welcome. Whoever identifies as a woman, we're celebrating. You don't have to be a woman, but you need to realize that however you show up, you're going to be led by women who identify as women, instructors and experts. So we're setting up the fact that we're celebrating women in fly fishing, but it's not exclusive too. But we are setting the expectation that if you come to this event, you're willing to celebrate women in fly fishing, because that's the whole premise of it, right? But the other things that we do, and when I say we, I'm going to talk about iFishiBelong and United Women on the Fly specifically. The things that we do to help create safer spaces is we don't publicly talk about the group campsites that we are going to be at and reserve. We don't put out where lodging is. We have a private space that when you register and we vet you, then you get that information. We don't talk publicly about where we're going to go as a group or individuals to fish. We encourage folks to fish in twos or threes. We don't encourage solitary fishing experiences for these types of events, right? And then we additionally go out, and I just did this in Roslyn, my community, and identify businesses and other services who have a proven track record of being queer friendly. And then we put them in a document that folks who register can see, and those are the businesses we support. I also put some businesses that I probably wouldn't want to walk into were I of this group. So there's some safety measures that we take when we're designing these types of group get-togethers that I hope is making an impactful difference in terms of us getting together for all the good reasons and then having a measure of safety around our gathering.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Fly Curious is also putting together a list of queer-friendly businesses, especially fly fishing businesses, along with those businesses in frequented fly destinations. It's like the top 20 destinations, Bozeman, those kind of areas where folks can visit. So I'm sure I'll be working with Heather and iFishiBelong. We'll be able to utilize some of that research that y'all have already done. But again, it still goes back to it's tough, where, again, all I can say is just we have heard and we have been told either by the shop itself, the guide itself, whomever is a representative, that they are welcoming and they will accept us. But again, they're open to the public. I don't know that they're going to stand up for people. I don't know that they've been trained in proper use of pronouns or anything like that. And they aren't going to misgender a person when they come in there, and that they aren't going to be welcoming. So again, it's so tough to guarantee that. And again, I'm trying to work with folks to be able to add the little flag to their Google business profile where they can show that they're welcoming to LGBTQ folks. Super easy if you just go onto your Google profile, and Fly Curious has a little info sheet that we can provide as well. And once you put that on there, we'll add you to our list of just businesses that recognize as LGBTQ plus welcoming. And again, that's not a vetting system. The most that it vets is just that they are willing to acknowledge that they are welcoming and that they love to welcome folks like that. But that is all that we can do without it being such a burdensome and, again, as a lawyer, legally risky task to put yourself out there and say that you vetted these places or creating or know that it is a safe space if you aren't in complete control. But I absolutely love, and I think that all the work that iFishiBelong and orgs like that are doing for their events and everything like that, and like the things that we do as well at Fly Curious to make sure that they are as safe as humanly possible. And yeah.
That kind of leads me to another area of questions for the both of you, and that is, for those who watch this panel discussion and are not queer themselves, what does it look like? What can they take away from this in order to be a strong ally to the queer community in fly fishing and in conservation? I mean, what is it that we would want from folks that are out there fishing with us to understand about us? What would we want them to do to be an ally?
So your question maybe something along the lines of like, what does good or strong allyship look like?
Yeah.
And I feel like so much of it, again, so this is one that I think is so personal for folks, where again, I've heard so many different definitions of an ally, and I've heard there's orgs and groups that come up with requirements and practically standards for calling yourself an ally, and people get called out for calling themselves an ally and everything like that when they don't think that they've done the proper work or the proper training or the proper learning. So I would say for me, an ally, again, I don't put a lot of weight on the other person to do a lot of educating of themselves. I'm always willing and happy to answer questions and to educate and to have people stumble over words and to feel uncomfortable and to come and know that it is a safe space to be uncomfortable and to ask questions and to know and to, again, ask the question of how they can be a good ally. It is so personal, but I'm not saying that that's the way that it is going to be for everybody. But the overarching thing I would say is just, again, trying to use more norms that I say would be accepting to queer folks, where again, I hear a lot of times I get asked, oh, do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a wife? Or that immediately puts me in an awkward situation where I have to correct them, as opposed to using gender neutral language is a great start as an ally and a great education tool as an ally, where you're creating a safe space for queer folks. Also, I would say standing up to the hate, just as Jay Michelle did on the side, from a racial side, is just as important from the queer side for folks. If you hear any hate, if you hear people using slang or, again, gay, fag, anything like that, it's not cool. It's not good. No matter if they think it's funny, if they aren't using it in that way, because now they think that it's been reshaped, it's not. Like, it still is derogatory. It absolutely puts it down. You'll see on our website on Fly Curious, we say fly fishing is gay. I can say it. I'm allowed to say it. And I mean, that's the thing. I think that it's a great empowering word to use, because people have said fly fishing is gay is so long as gear anglers, and they use it as a hateful term. And we want to take it back. We want to use it as an empowering term. But again, if you see people posting comments like that on Instagram, even, it's simple things like that, standing up to it and saying, hey, that's not cool, not chiming in, not laughing along. Again, so often I see just comment threads on Instagram posts and things like that. They're just filled with kind of derogatory comments that aren't meant to be hateful or anything like that, but just kind of perpetuate the stereotypes, the kind of just the standard hate that we see and the intolerance that we see and that we interpret as non-acceptance in a non-welcoming space. So again, trying to eliminate that, trying to stand up to that as much as possible and to those invisible spaces on Instagram. Since again, I don't think that we do see the hate necessarily as much in person. It is kind of more hidden. So being an ally on the virtual space is important too.
We've done a couple over the years with United Women, especially. We did a couple surveys of fly shops, and then we put together some mini trainings on how to be more welcoming in your shop. That is a resource that if anyone wants to look at, it doesn't have to be a fly shop, but it's basically how do you make your business more welcoming. You can replace fly shop with whatever. But beyond that, for anyone who is interested in, like, what is an ally? How do I do it? What does it look like? Is a fairy going to come down and deem me ally? Or is there something I can do to... And also, to be honest with you, in the same way that advocating and advocacy is a scary word for people, allyship scares people too. And I get it, because you're like, I don't know what that means. And I have a heart of gold, but I don't even know what I'm doing. And I'm so afraid of doing it wrong. I'm just going to sit here quietly. I get that. But allyship to me is an active, ongoing practice of using your privilege to support and advocate for folks who don't share that privilege. So it requires listening first. Like, what do you need? Not let me tell you about every gay person I've ever known to prove to you that I'm someone worthy of your... And we've all had that happen to us. But no, it's like, let me listen first. Let me listen first, and let me educate myself without expecting you to educate me on what it's like to be gay, fill in the blank. Without placing that burden on others, do some research yourself, educate yourself, and then try to amplify voices, amplify others' voices, center other communities that you're supporting versus yourself. There's a lot that can go into being an ally, but you don't have to take a master class in allyship. There are very, very simple steps you can take. And frankly, one of the easiest ones is looking up the top 10 phrases you can use that make you neutral when it comes to gender, sexuality, orientation, all the stuff, and start using those in your everyday speech. Doesn't matter if you're in a very rural space in a feed store talking to someone versus you're on a street in Portland at a Starbucks. Start using the same phrases, and the change and frankly the relief you're going to see in people is amazing, because you're not necessarily even just speaking to someone who is standing before you in, I'm going to just use the term, marginalized community. You're not always talking to someone who is queer themselves. Guaranteed they know someone and they love someone, or they're related to someone who is. And knowing that suddenly there's someone talking to them that has an inviting space, just by changing the language, can go so far. It's amazing to just feel the pressure drop in a room when you're having conversations and using more neutral language. and really paying attention to the things that you're saying.
As a
Thanks,
person
Jay
that though needs to like place people though, I can say, and I'm going to express my personal frustration. The amount of cis straight men that are now saying partner when they refer to their wives and girlfriends, I don't know why. It is so confusing to me, and now it just throws me off. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I
now
love
it's your
it,
turn.
but
Yeah.
I know. It's like I love it. Like I
Right.
absolutely love that they
You're
do
like,
that
wait
and
a
everything
minute.
like that. I'm like, but now it just throws me off. I'm like, God damn it! Like I don't. Oh, like, okay.
Yeah.
Like they're being more woke than I am now. I'm like, what the heck?
Well, on that
I
note,
do
I
love
can't
it.
believe it, but we've run a fair bit of time here. I'm going to ask both of you a final question. You know, we're doing this because it's Pride Month in June, and there's always, you know, the hoopla of Pride. But when Pride Month is done, what do we hope from our communities that they carry from Pride, that they carry from this panel? What would we like to see year round instead of just focusing on, you know, during Pride? What do you hope for the future to help us be more accepted, more welcome, feel more safe in the community as we go about our fly fishing learning journey, our conservation learning journey, and being out there with folks?
I think representation again is just so important, and like I just can't say it enough. Because again, I think that representation for every othered community is so different. Almost every space, I always try to acknowledge my privilege. Like, I am a cis white male that I can exist in a space where I don't have to show my other at all if I don't want to. And if I don't want to have to disclose that, I don't have to. So I can make and keep the space safe for me to some degree if I'm willing to compromise myself. And it's like, I just want to be able to make sure that I'm not complacent to that and that other folks are less complacent to it so that they feel safe and that they don't feel like they have to hide that part of them, and so that they feel like they are represented in the space. And that we find a way to properly represent the queer community in the fly fishing industry and in different outdoor spaces where, again, so much is in that visual media space where it can just be different and it can be difficult. But people like Jay, Michelle, and you, Penny, I think the representation is amazing, but I hate that we sometimes have to shout it from the rooftop to say that we are other. But you know what? If we have to, and if we're willing to do it, then God damn it, let's just keep on doing that. So it's like, I want to
That's
keep
right.
on getting more and more people to do that and make that the
That's right.
norm, and make it just so there aren't people that raise their eyebrows and say, I don't care, don't share that with me. So they're just completely norm, completely fine, and that people love you for it and that people accept you for it, or they just view that as another piece of who you are. Just like I like to shout from the rooftop that I'm a fly fishing nerd, like that's just as much a part of who I love and who I am as a person and what shapes my reality.
Great. Jay, Michelle, thank you, Justin.
You know, months of celebration exist to accentuate, not to just be like the one month you celebrate and then it goes away. And that's how I view any of these months or days that we emphasize something. And I think that it's important to emphasize and put a spotlight on other communities. What I expect when June is done is what I expect every day of my life, and that is to have more interactions with more people who care, want the world to be better, and want to have a supportive community regardless of where they're coming from or how they identify. And I want to encourage more conversation. Like I say this, and I had the occasion to be in a couple different public spaces lately, and I am sincere when I say, if you're wondering about how to go about this or you have a question, call me, email me. You can Google and find my information. Like, I want to talk about this. I live now. I used to live in a much larger space on the west side of, Washington. That was in the capital. So it was a liberal bubble. I don't live there anymore, right? I live in a rural tourist town. It's very small, but I'm having the time of my life, and there's a lot of support here. I would like to further the conversation. I would like to continue to talk to, like, across state lines and different types of communities about how do we represent and what can we do together to hold each other up and lift each other up and not feel potentially so isolated, but also just have these great conversations. If not in person, then like this. But I don't know, Penny, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as you're talking, Jay, Michelle, I'm just thinking about that because, yes, I live on the liberal west side of the state, and yet as the chair of a statewide organization.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all around the state. I'm in rural, I'm in semi-rural, I'm in really ultra-conservative spaces. I mean, I'm all over the place. In addition to me representing it to the absolute best I can, and I'm pretty obvious about that. I try really hard to do that. My wish is for it to become the norm, as you said, Justin, that yes, I'm representing, but that it doesn't raise eyebrows, that it doesn't, people don't go like, oh, now what do I say? Now what do I do? Now what? Oh, why did she say that? What, now what? Why didn't she just keep that to herself? I'm just going to keep making it uncomfortable, because it is only through exposure that people learn. Right. And so that's what I'm taking away from this. And that's what I'm hoping. And that, yes, June accentuates the fact that we deserve to be celebrated and we deserve to celebrate ourselves. And around the rest of the year, we also deserve to be recognized and acknowledged and valued and not othered, and also not thought of as, it doesn't matter. It's none of my business, because it is. Because as soon as you say you're none of my business, you've just diminished me. And I will not be diminished anymore.
Good.
We deserve validation. We all deserve validation.
We all do. And so, allies, if you're listening, that's what we need. That's what we want.
Right on.
Justin, J. Michelle, thank you so much for your time, your frankness, your honesty, your compassion. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I could go for another hour. I don't know about either of you. But then I wouldn't have dinner, and you'd hear my stomach growling, and it would drown us.
I'm making razor clam ceviche. So.
Oh boy!
Brag, why don't you? Oh my God! Exactly. Me too. Penny, thank you so much for lending your talent to this conversation. I deeply appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you both.
Thank you.
And happy Pride, everybody.
Happy Pride.
Happy
you
Pride.
too. Great to see you both.
Take care.
Love to all.
We're out.
Mwah. Bye.
Bye.